All right, so everybody welcome. This is the virtual artist talk for Tidal Pull, works featuring Emily Elliott Seijo. We're really excited about this exhibition, and we've been spoiled to get to spend so long with it in the gallery. It's great. Every day being in that space, getting to spend time with the work is just a joy. So we're happy to have both artists Emily Elliott and Seijo with us this evening. We're gonna kind of talk through what the exhibition has been like, both in terms of the curation and the kind of execution of it, but also we're gonna get into the works themselves from both artists and then how that kind of has worked in concert together to bring the exhibition to what it is right now.
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know us, we should introduce ourselves.
Absolutely, yeah. So my name is Matt Chapman.
And I'm Nicole Duquette.
We are the owners of Curio Gallery and Creative Supply here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. We are an art gallery and art supply store located in downtown Lancaster, featuring mostly drawing and writing supplies. We have fine art papers, watercolors, inks, all kinds of great things. And we get the pleasure of putting on exhibitions of artists who we feel are making really impactful and meaningful work. And getting to bring that to our Lancaster community has been a joy, pure joy. And yeah, we're just a few shades over a year old, so we're starting to find our groove and it feels really good. So, all right, perhaps if we could start with introductions from both Emily and Lena, that'd be wonderful. And kind of introduce yourselves to us, and I suppose we'll start with that. So that'd be good. And let's see, Emily, would you like to start it off?
Me? I'll go first.
Wonderful.
Yes. Okay. I'm Emily. I'm in Philadelphia currently. Mostly a sculptor, sometimes printmaker, multimedia. I'm in my studio now. I know Matt and Nicole through going to grad school with Matt and have been friends since then. And it's been a lot of fun working on this show. And it's been the cheeriest spot out of 2020. So I appreciate that a lot. Thank you guys.
Thank you. All right.
All right, I guess it's my turn.
Your turn.
So my name is, I go by Seijo, or you can call me Lena, either or. I'm a photographer, and I've been living in Lancaster for about 3 to 4 years. I met Matt and Nicole, I think, last year, and I sent them my work and stuff, and I guess that's how this happened. But yeah, that's me.
That is definitely how it happened.
Yeah.
So actually, that's a wonderful little segue into how the exhibition came to be. Seijo said it wonderfully. She sent us a collection of her work, and there were just these absolutely beautiful photographs. And actually, maybe only 1 or 2 of them in the packet that you submitted to us were not in this exhibition. But I mean, you couldn't ask for a better kind of introductory package when it comes to submitting artwork. It was beautifully done. The artist statement was included, and everything just made so much sense. And I think as curators and artists ourselves, we spend a lot of time thinking about how our work is seen and how words go along with that, and how it's so important to be able to see the connection in the writing and the work. And sometimes when they don't connect, it kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit. But with Seijo's, it was just perfect. And I believe at the time, we didn't know exactly what to do with them, but we know we wanted to do something with them. And it was just a matter of sitting down and thinking about who can we pair with this work that would just make such a wonderful conversation. And pretty much simultaneously, we felt like, oh, we should look at Emily Elliott and bring these two together. And it was a great meeting too, because both of you were so immediately like, yeah, let's do it. And it was great. There was no like, well, we have to see. And I suppose maybe that was if there were to be bonuses of the quarantine and what we had to go through with COVID, I feel like a lot of us had some time, and we were able to kind of take a step back and focus more about what we think is really important. And I think for the four of us, Nicole, myself, Seijo, and Emily, it was artwork and putting together a really beautiful exhibition.
We should note, like, we were planning this exhibition early in 2020. I want to say in February and in March. And the show was initially supposed to go up in July or even in June sometime. So it was something that kind of got pushed back after our lockdown. And once we could reopen, the previous exhibitions had their allotted time. We wanted to give them. So this is something that we were planning for this summer, but we're so thrilled to have it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's just a stunning collection of work. And actually, let's go ahead and do a screen share here. We can share our exhibition.
Yes, for anyone who hasn't seen it, we have a virtual exhibition, kind of 3 different walkthroughs. One is like you're actually going through the gallery. You can kind of see how we've paired the work together with both artists or them, like kind of their work with themselves. And then we have kind of a slideshow of just Emily's work and then a slideshow of just Seijo's work. That way you can see maybe even greater detail and nuances that may have been missed through the walkthrough. I thought that was a nice solution to be able to see some of those, some more detailed work if you couldn't be there in person.
Right.
Yeah.
There we go.
There, nice. Technical issues.
Yeah. Anyway. All right. So let's keep this up. So let's see, here we go. So this is on our website, and if you'd like to pull this up yourselves, or if you want to revisit these images, they are available through our website, and you can click on virtual exhibition and you can check all of this out.
And this show is up until November 28th, so still available to view in person and online for about 2.5 weeks now.
Yeah. And so these first groups of images, this is actually how the work appears in our gallery. With the pairings that we've made, both with Seijo's work and Emily's work, and then the combined pieces. So from our standpoint, when we started to put this exhibition together, it wasn't really until we got all of the work out into our space and put it all out that they really started to talk to one another. And let's see, I'm gonna move through a little quickly here. This is actually the first wall that was to come together. And both Nicole and I started to make visual connections between Emily's works and Seijo's works. So for each image, each of the 4 of Seijo's images, the one that kind of runs parallel to it was a piece that we resonated with Emily's work. And something inside each one of them just made it feel like they belonged together. Whether it was an aesthetic choice or if it was kind of an energy that the pieces were giving off, they just felt like they belonged next to one another. So when we got this rolling, this felt really, really good, and it gave us the momentum to move through the rest of the exhibition.
Yeah, definitely texturally and size was important with this wall as we were building it. Like the sizes responded to one another, something wasn't overpowering another, and like you said, there were elements throughout each that sort of corresponded and responded to one another.
And Emily and Seijo, if there are anything you'd like to add in, just feel free to just jump right in the conversation. And this collection of pieces is on our back wall. And just if you've been in our space, this wall gets your attention the minute you step into the space. And I feel like every exhibition we've had, this wall has been a kind of an interesting one because it, like I said, it commands your attention, but it also gives us an opportunity to play. I suppose all the walls in the gallery allow us to do that, but this one seems particularly kind of like its own little thing, a little 9-foot section that is not separate from the rest of the work, but at least it faces in a different direction. So it feels like we can do like really bold things here. And this collection is just nuts. Hanging Emily's circular piece right here in the middle. There are elements of Seijo's images inside of Emily's, and there are elements of Emily's inside each one of Seijo's photographs, and you'll find that throughout the exhibition. It was not a hard connection to make, and it was really refreshing when things just kind of lined up. And there were a lot of times where we had so many pairings that looked really great together. It was just a matter of like really landing on one. But it wasn't until like the two pieces that ended up next to one another or parallel to one another landed that way that we're like, yes, that's the way it has to be. Felt really good. So let's see here.
So some of the questions that we get when people are viewing, or maybe not so much questions, but things people are wondering about or interested in, is a little bit about process with both of you. With Emily, I mean, your works are monotypes on plaster, which we can maybe show some more detail of those. And Seijo, with your works, it's sort of the vibrancy of the color. And so maybe talking a little bit about the process in making these pieces could be kind of cool. We are aware of parts of it, but it's a lot of questions that we've been getting as people have walked through the space.
For sure.
I'm curiously, because there's no point of reference, what size, or let's say the frames?
Seijo?
Oh, there's 16 by 24. Yeah.
And those squares that we saw, I
Oh
believe,
yeah, the squares.
by 10.
Well, 10 by 10.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
that.
10 by. Sorry, I forgot.
So Seijo, why don't you talk to us a little bit about the creation of these pieces, and then also, you know, what it was like to have them printed at the size they are, and then I know the orientation in which they were hung was also something that was really a profound moment for you too.
Yeah, sure. So with these pieces, I will say that prior to this project, I was working on a collection involving plants, and I was experimenting with photo gels, putting them in front of a lens and using them on my external flash. And then after that collection, when I was working on this one, I used the photo gels for this one too. So it's basically photo gels that I was just playing around and experimenting with them. And then printing wise, so, oh wait, I forgot to add too, when I took these photos, I wanted them to be vertical, like like the way you see them. And then when I printed them, I decided I was going to do them horizontal. But then when I received the images, I switched back to vertical again. And yeah.
It was an awesome decision to do that.
Yeah. I'm glad I made that decision, and I'm glad you guys were really happy with it too.
Oh yeah.
I was nervous because when I presented the images to you at first, it was horizontal, but yeah.
Well, we know how the process can change, and sometimes when something presents itself and you can't ignore it, it's best to have a conversation about it. And actually, can we go back to that?
Oh,
that one
yeah,
piece?
sorry.
Okay. So, Seijo, something that was really cool. You know, being across the street from PCA&D, we have a lot of art students who come into our space, and a lot of them have been taking note of the exhibition while they're kind of, you know, grabbing the things they need for class or just kind of doing some retail therapy. But with this one in particular, we had a student who was convinced that it was a charcoal drawing.
Wow.
And when they read that it was photography, they were just kind of stunned by it. This one and this one too, they thought they were charcoal drawings.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, and it was really cool to kind of see that translation because the student who was in, you know, does a lot of really intense drawing, and I guess just kind of thinks through that language. So when they saw this, they're like, "Wow, are these charcoals?" And then they were photography, and they were blown away.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
And so these are all the images individually. I'm going to pop back up here to yes, this is exactly the image I was thinking about. So if we take a look to the left side of this image, something really great that happened with a number of Seijo's photographs is when we were pairing them together, we liked this kind of vertical stack. And it was great to find the moments where the images would almost stitch together in a way that was not intended at all. But just like if you follow that shadow down into the middle of that next piece, and then it inverts, and it like what was shadow becomes light, and that flipped. It's really great when kind of two pieces can be read as individuals, but also be picked up as one. And then the same on the other side too, about how like that red gel is on the bottom, but that violet gel is on the top. When you put these two things together, they just make one piece. It's really cool.
That's interesting, because when I received the image, when I received the prints, I had them laid out on the side, so I wouldn't be able to tell that, but I guess when you guys were playing around with it, it was, yeah.
Yeah, once we had them all lined up and knew that you wanted them vertically, we started kind of just like pairing them and matching them, grouping them with your own works, with Emily's works, just to see how they sort of reacted with one another. And interestingly, with the works vertically, I mean, I think we've talked about it with you, it gives it this other level of abstraction. Like, we can see the tide, we can see the waves crashing onto the shoreline, and those are familiar spaces, but there are elements with it being vertical that make it, they just kind of change it.
Yeah.
Is it a familiar landscape? Is it something otherworldly? Like, it, to us, and I think to a lot of viewers, is that it just transports them to maybe a different space.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
And definitely on the topic of different spaces, we can move into talking with Emily about her process and kind of the way that these pieces came together. It's something that is so fun to watch when people come in the gallery. They're like trying to like get their head right up against the wall to like see how they're attached and what's going on there. And then when they read the wall text, and they're like, plaster monotype with charcoal. What? You know, like, I know what those two things are, but how? That's usually what comes about. So Emily, it would be great if we could get a little bit of insight into the pieces themselves, but also kind of your ways of working and what's important to you when it comes to bringing these pieces out into the open.
Sure. I like when you talk about the spaces that they create, because I think of these spaces as the spaces that I want to be in, or that I would like to hold and inhabit. Oftentimes they're so ethereal based, or things that are just so vastly off in the distance that are not attainable. But I think that I make these things so that I can hold and have and possess those kinds of ethereal things that otherwise cannot. Talking about process, I think probably they look so much like some of the things that Lena's talking about is because they're made in a very similar way, with water movement and evaporation and sand detritus and bits of natural elements that kind of do a lot of the making for me. So with those plaster monotypes, it often starts with vats of water with charcoal or ink or sometimes paper pulp filtered into that. Then that water evaporates, and whatever residue is left behind, that's where the plaster monotype process comes in, where the wet plaster goes down on that now dried substrate with whatever residue is there. And then when that plaster sets, you can flip it like a pancake, and then that image is revealed on the other side. So very printmakey in that aspect of it. So that's why I think of them as monotypes. They're somewhat repeatable, not entirely, but there is a transfer of image that makes them monotypes to me. Talking about the hanging aspect of it, there's often little wire bits implanted in it when the plaster is still wet, that when it solidifies, captures that wire, and then they have hanging loops in the back. But sometimes that's also difficult because I don't know what that image is going to look like when I flip it. It's often a surprise. So I often put a bunch of those loops in so that when I flip it and see that image, I can have a little bit of a say in which direction they orient, but often not always. They're pretty organically made, and they kind of have a mind of their own. There's a lot that I can do to manipulate it, but it often dictates on its own what it's going to look like.
You made hanging these works, I mean, being plaster, they're quite fragile. You made hanging very easy, and Emily made these templates that are to size. they look like the pieces on like newsprint paper, and like nail holes or like anchors, like holes where like everything should go.
Yeah.
So we had very little handling of the works, which was amazing.
Yeah. And you know, from a curatorial standpoint, it's a little nerve-wracking when you're handling something so delicate, and you know that, you know, if with a painting in a frame, if it were to slip from your hand, certainly like it's always a terrible thing, but a frame can be kind of readjusted, or like a canvas can be restapled. But with something like yours, if that thing were to fall from a hand, that would be catastrophic. At least for me, like I don't think I could sleep after doing something like that. But having the templates and being able to see what they would look like out in the space without having to handle the actual piece until it was time to put it on the wall made hanging just a dream. It was awesome. And Seijo, same for you too. I mean, with everything being right in the same spot, it was just a matter of getting the measurement down, and then you can just move. Like once you found your center line and you knew how high to put it up, it's the same every time. So it made hanging everything very, very pleasurable.
Emily, you mentioned something about these worlds that you're creating and talking about them being vast. I've seen it kind of just when I'm within the gallery space observing the work, and others thinking that maybe it's more microscopic and that we're like really zoomed into a world.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think sometimes they are very microbial, or they often make me think about germination and maybe little cells starting to bubble, or things that kind of effervesce or turn into crystalline structures. So I think oftentimes they are very, very microscopic, but I think visually that is also very similar to macroscopic.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And then seeing it with something maybe more zoomed out of Seijo's work, it's like maybe I'm observing an atmosphere of some kind, or particularly this piece here that's with the red gel, the pretty intense red gel, like that looks like to me a landscape of another planet of some kind.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of something quite vast versus something very microscopic, and those relationships.
Yeah. I think it's really important too. Like, you know, you can go to other worlds with this, but then when you realize that they are here with us, and we can go and find these spaces, or many of us have even visited spaces very similar to this. Like, I think a lot of us have been to like the beach or have seen the ocean, or at least on a lake, and have like been at the meeting point of water and land. And I think it's different from the shore. And Seijo, maybe you can talk to this too, but I feel like the shore kind of talks about, I guess, both of those, like maybe the body of water and the land as one, where I feel like what you're showing in these photographs is a very, very, very pointed, focused, I guess, small piece of that landscape.
Yeah, so I get let's see. So when I took these photos, I will mention that being like standing there right on the shore, it was a grand feeling. And not only that, but like you had mentioned, like these little parts of like the ocean, like the sand and like the formation of the sands and stuff, it was just it was like admiring to me. Like it was just, how do you say it? I can't think of the word right now.
Awestruck.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And it was just, it made me feel like this is how it would be like in another planet or something. For some reason, like I had that connection there, but I never been in another planet before. I've never been to the moon. So it just, I don't know, it was like a very deep connection for me, just like being there and then capturing all these little, just like the sand, the way the waves would form, make these forms on the sand, and like, yeah. I don't know if I explained that well enough, but yeah.
Well, you're remembering when you took those photos, and it seems to me like we've heard you speak about this moment a couple times now, and every time you talk about it, you get just as excited as I feel like you were when you took
Yeah.
the photos, which I think is a great thing. Like if I think if you can make something and then, you know, not feel anything about it when you look at it anymore, then maybe something is something's changed, or, and you know, change isn't a bad thing, but I do think that when you can look at something and feel the same way about looking at it as, you know, it was when you captured it in the first time, I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah.
And so, you know, perhaps you guys can talk a little bit, like you've both seen the exhibition. And I mean, I know, Emily, you haven't had the chance to see it in person since we've had it up. But I think just like seeing even like this virtual exhibition, I think gives a pretty good feel of just like the relationship that the pieces have together. And every time, like I feel like I've said it a couple times now, but every time we come into this space, we find something different in them, and a new level of connection, and a new similarity, new parallel, and it's always so exciting. So, how do you both feel about seeing your pieces next to each other's?
I think it's awesome. I can't believe you guys are able to do this, because it looks like me and Emily were like working on this together, but it's crazy how it just goes so well with each other. And like this one especially, I don't know, I think it's amazing. I'm pretty happy that you guys are able to do this. So
Awesome.
I was thinking, as I was at work the other day hanging someone else's work, I was thinking about what my favorite parts of being an artist are, and I think it's definitely finding other people who are as excited about the small things as you are, to find those people who share commonalities with you, and it's because you can recognize it in other people's work. And that's been so exciting to get to meet and talk with Lena about this, is that she has those same excitements and about relatively small or overlookable things, but is excited about it and wants to make something to show you so that you'll get excited about it too. And I think that's been so much fun, and I've enjoyed a lot talking with Lena about the small natural things that we feel so excited about. And I really appreciate that, finding other people to be excited about the things that I also feel excited about.
Yeah, you find your people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, what's really fun is I think that you know, a lot of people who could be your people came into our space and viewed the show, and a lot of them have said something very similar. They're like, "Wow, like I know I've seen this before, but I've never seen it this way." And you know, they're largely talking about the photographs. They're like, I've been here, but I've never thought about it like this. And with the frame that we were just on, somebody kind of was standing in front of this for a good while, and then they said, it feels like the pieces are lit from behind, and we're looking through a pane of like frosted glass. And I thought that was awesome, because you're taking this, I mean, the shore, the beach is this thing that's very horizontal and very under our feet, and you've kind of turned it on its head and put it on a wall. And it's absolutely changed the way that we are familiar with looking at that event or that phenomena. So when you obscure it like that and you abstract it the way that you have, it allows people to find other things in it. And I think it's really a fascinating thing to watch people look at your photographs. And Emily, I'm gonna hop down here and go back to this piece, Timekeeper. We have a regular in our space who comes in multiple times in the week anyway, just to chat and see what's going on. But they are so absolutely taken with this piece, and every time they just kind of stand in quiet contemplation of it, and they find some other thing to get excited about. And what's really fun about this one too is like it features the cactus spine, and it actually resonated with them so deeply that when they were in their own backyard, they found themselves getting really excited over a little pod of pine needles. And they're like, oh my gosh, it looked just like Emily's cactus spine. And I got so excited. I had to go grab my camera and take photos. And I think that's a powerful thing that art can do. And I think as an artist, we don't always get to hear those things. And that's kind of the nice thing about being a fly on the wall in the gallery space is we're behind the desk and people kind of experience the work on their own. And if they feel they have questions, they'll ask, but largely they explain to themselves how excited they get by it. And it's a cool thing to be able to relay.
That's sweet. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, where did you collect those cactus spines? Like, it's been burning at me.
I'm pretty sure it came from Texas. I think so.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah. I can only imagine what's in all of those little containers and boxes and flat files behind you.
Yeah, a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah, that's
A
awesome.
lot of it.
Very, very good. All right. And this piece too, people are constantly marveling at. They read that it's lava rock, and then they're like, the first thing out of their mouths is, how are they attached? And then they smash their face against the wall and they can't see anything. And we don't reveal any of that. It's kind of, I like it. I like the mystery of it. I like the mystery of not knowing. We know, but it's great to see that mystery in other people. And then their speculation is just as fun. But a lot of people have also related this to a mirror or like a reflecting pool, myself included. I also look at it as a kind of reflecting pool. I expect to see my reflection in it when I look at it, but then I also think of it as a portal, looking out, which is also, I think, a really cool thing. When you can go in and out on a space.
A student was just in this afternoon, and we were talking about this piece and related it to like a bird's eye view of a body of water, and this like landform around it. We had a good conversation about it.
Yeah.
But yes, this stops people, this piece.
Mm-hmm. And in this image, you'll notice that there's a little shelf that's got a collection of Seijo's photography. And that in itself, the people who've picked that up have just been floored by that too. You've got a lot of really beautiful pairings in that. And, it's definitely something that you should, if you are able to come into the gallery, pick a copy up and just take a look through it. And I'm sure you'll be taking it home with you. It's just incredible. So Seijo, like, I know that this particular body of work came from kind of like one, I'd call it one adventure.
Yeah.
But where do you, like, I guess I should maybe even ask, like, how do you arrive at the moment when you decide, like, I need a photograph of this, or I need to take a photograph? Are you the type of person who kind of contemplates taking the photograph, or do you see something and say, I need to photograph this and then go for it?
I'm pretty much like, if I see a good picture, I have to take it. Yeah. Sometimes, and then one of the bad things about that is I feel like there's a lot of things that are not meant to be taken. Like, it's just for your eyes only, because you'll take the picture and it's not like the way it turned you were expecting it to be. But usually if I see something that I really love, I'll have to take it. Yeah.
Awesome. And so if I can pry a little bit, how many of those photographs do you look at and say, yeah, this is what I meant for, and then others you're like, this one just didn't quite capture it?
From that book, or just like in general? Or?
Yeah, in your practice, yeah.
I'd say that it happens. I mean, I'd say it happens a lot where the picture doesn't turn out the way I want it to be. If that's what you're asking.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Great. So I think that makes the ones that stay even more powerful.
Even more. Yeah.
I mean, editing is part of a process. Sometimes you have to know what is too much or what is not quite right. And just omit it from a body of work. Or maybe that, for you, maybe that photograph led to the next moment that really captured what you saw or what you were hoping would translate through the image. So yes, editing is a big part of the creative process, any kind of creative process.
Yeah. It's not my favorite process. I usually like to work with natural lighting mostly to avoid the editing, but there's times where you just can't help it. Like you gotta edit.
Understandable. Yeah.
And so looking in the chat, I see there's a question for Emily from Sophia. It says, Emily, how did you come up with your process? It's so magic. I am also very interested in this because I feel like we were around each other about the same time. That I feel like you were just on the edge of starting to work this way. And I was telling a story about how, like a lot of us at the academy and graduate school, we keep our doors open and we would see a little bit of what was going on. And I feel like with you, I would see the beginning of a thing and then come back by and it's already finished. And like, I was like, oh, like I missed it. Like, I'd love to know more about like how you've arrived at this process and like, where do you see it going?
Yeah, it definitely is a process. And it is very, very organically made. A lot of it recycles things that are previous projects or failures, or kind of one process helps me discover another, and then I try to replicate that or learn what I can alter and what I can predict to have some control over that. And I can remember the very first plaster plate that I poured, but I'm not totally sure why I did that. I'm sure that I had some kind of tray of residue in my studio, plaster also kicking around somewhere, and somehow poured it into that first tray. And then after that kind of started that process of learning what I can control and what I can't. So coming somewhat from a printmaking process, I think more traditional printmaking process on paper, acid, etching plates, things like that, that kind of like take one thing to the next level process is something that I've done for a while. But it also has a lot of editing to it, in that I make a lot of stuff and it doesn't always have magic. I have a lot of stinkers kicking around that just don't have anything special, or they don't have a sparkle in them. And then oftentimes too, like that one that Matt was referring to as a reflecting pool, that blue-green plate I poured probably 5 years ago, and it didn't get its next move until maybe 6 or 8 months ago. So sometimes they just they're not ready to manifest, and then something happens and then they are. So the process it feels as much of a surprise to me as it does something that I can actually chase after. And I think that's a lot of fun for me. Frustrating too at times. I feel like I do waste a lot of plaster. I have a lot of plates that just aren't doing anything right now. But it is very, it's a lot like hiking and exploring and seeing what you come upon and then chasing that to its next step.
I like that.
Nice. So I love hearing that your process is very much, I want to say, trial and error. There's definitely experimentation. And with this body of work with Lena, with the gels, that was also very much experimentation and not knowing fully how it was going to resolve and what the result was going to be. So I love hearing that it's very much about kind of experimenting and sort of exploring.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the creative process. It's always it's a long meander. It's sometimes that path is really clear and you can see for miles ahead, and other times it's super dense and you're just kind of like feeling your way through it, hoping that you don't, trip and fall. But yeah, I also love that plate sat, kind of hung around for years until it ended up where it has, and now it's in our space. So it's a really cool thing. I think being artists ourselves, or anybody who practices anything creative, and maybe it's not even just a creative thing, but I think a lot of us accumulate things for a while, and sometimes they hang around and you're like, oh man, like what am I doing with this thing? And then all of a sudden it finds its purpose. I think that's a really significant thing. And sometimes they hang around for a very long time and you have to be okay with letting something go, or recycling, or hitting that delete button and like, oh, now I've got all that space back. But
yeah. That makes me think back to when you were talking about hanging them and the potential bad thing happening of dropping or breaking them. That's what a lot of these not special plates or ones that I've had for years kind of are good for. Oftentimes I break them on purpose to see how durable they are or see how fragile or what kind of surfaces can take to those. So they do have a life after that, but it's also nice to not feel so precious about them that, you know, I can make more and they're mine and I can do what I want with it. And it's kind of fun to break them sometimes. They're fragile in the way that nature and other things that I appreciate are fragile.
Which just circles back to the work.
Yeah, circles back to the work.
Well, if anyone has any questions, feel free to, if you're muted, you can unmute and ask, or feel free to put it in the chat. And
yeah.
I have a question for Emily real quick.
Yeah.
Those rocks, where exactly did you get them from? What
That's
is that a secret?
No, but that's the one batch of rocks that I've actually purchased. So there's a special story there. I try not to do that, and I try to be very conscientious about where I do take things from, avoiding national parks or things like that where it feels not appropriate to take from. But those are not special rocks.
It's still cool. It's one of my favorite pieces, actually. So
thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And that's a significant thing too, because I feel like sometimes the urge to have things be, you know, authentic's not the right word, but if you like, I'm a collector myself. I pick up all kinds of things, and I often have to stop and say, like, should I take this? Do I need this? Is this going to end up like in a meaningful place, or is it going to end up in my pocket, which will eventually end up in the bottom of the dryer, kind of thing, you know? So. And particularly something like lava rock, I think there are ecosystems that depend on those kinds of things. But I also know that there are places that safely or sustainably farm these materials. So it's probably a good thing you didn't go out there and clean chisel off. Or I remember being in British Columbia and coming upon a lava rock deposit. And our guide that was with us is like, yeah, there's actually a lot of small crustaceans and a lot of creatures that depend on these rocks. So I was like, oh, okay. So let them have their homes and don't take them.
Yeah.
I like that. But yeah, this would be a great time if anybody has questions for either artist.
Well, it's not an artistic question, but Seijo, what part of Brooklyn are you from? I grew up in Brooklyn. I'm from Gravesend.
I can hear it in your voice. I'm from Sunset Park, actually.
From where?
Sunset Park. Yeah.
Brooklynites.
Two Brooklynites. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Did you say Gravesend?
Gravesend.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
like between Coney Island and Sheepshead Bay.
I had a few friends in high school that they were in a band and their name was Gravesend. They named it right after the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We've got Sophie from Manhattan. Manhattan Holler, I love it. Steve, I feel like every time you pop on here, you find someone from Brooklyn to talk to.
Yeah, right. It's like a magnet. Yeah.
Very good. All right. Well, anybody out there? Any questions, or we can, kind of.
I thought this was nice. So now I could go onto your website and see all this stuff, right? And zoom in, I guess.
These images as they are. Yeah, you can really zoom in a little bit.
Yeah.
And look, it has the sizes right next to it. Look at that.
Yes. So you can get a sense of their scale.
Right.
Yeah.
A question for both artists. Can you hear me? I don't know if my headphones work right.
Yep, we
Okay.
can. Mm-hmm.
So it seems a lot like, how do I state this? Both artists sort of take things with them from the experience of where they originally manifested from, these ideas and these feelings and these sort of ephemera. And so I'm curious maybe like how the role of memory plays in both of your processes, or how you see memory working in tandem, or like in your work with you, or how you think of it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go, Emily?
Sure, I can go first. Memory. I kind of think possibly why, like Matt talks about, I'm a collector and pocketer of little things like this too. And I wonder if it's because I often feel kind of a nostalgic person, but also with being drawn to ephemera and things that are just not lasting, but to have an emotional attachment to things like fog and weather, and it comes and goes. And so maybe memory for me is that, you know, oftentimes those things make me sad, beautiful weather or like thick, heavy atmosphere. And maybe I want that to stay longer, so I make it so that I can have it. And maybe it's kind of like making those things a little more concrete and making it last, so that they don't go away and float away and are gone forever. I don't totally think of them as memory like mementos. They're not kind of like homages to those things, but more a manifestation of keeping those things for myself rather than, you know, memorializing them.
Pretty much that's the same for me. Usually memory is very significant to me. I'm like Emily was saying, I can be very nostalgic, and you know, it's when it comes to photography, like if something pretty much, for example, like when I was doing this collection, I was with friends and my husband, and just that time being there, like it was so special. Something like that will never be like that again. And you know, with my I'm able to like keep certain parts of those memories with my camera and taking pictures of it. If that makes sense.
And Seijo, I actually have a kind of like a connecting question to that.
Yeah.
How often do you have your camera with you?
So now I have, because I have I have a lot of cameras actually, but all right, I'll answer your question. I wasn't going to answer, but I now have my camera with me everywhere. It's like I invested in this small little Olympus camera probably about 2 years ago, and I can like take it with me anywhere. So now I usually have my camera with me everywhere I go.
And how often do you take photos with your phone?
I used to a lot before, but now my phone, the camera is not working in it. It doesn't focus anything, so I don't really use my phone as much as I did before. But I use like when it was working, I would use my cell phone sometimes too.
Cool. I guess the reason I ask is, like, I feel like our cell phones are always with us. I feel like a lot of us take them for granted, that we always have them, and we have this way to record things, whether it's an image or a video or something, documents, communications. Like, we just have a way to keep all of that stuff. And I know, like, I can be guilty of this, where I just take, 6 or 7 photos of the same thing and hope that I get one that looks like what I wanted it to be. And then equally as guilty as I sometimes don't go back and review them. And I would wonder if that, that kind of has a connection to memory, if it's a matter of like, well, it's there and I don't need to remember it so much because I can go back and review it, but I never do. So am I actually making the memory? Where I feel like taking an image with a camera, it's a tool designed for that one purpose. And when you bring it up to your eye and you hit that shutter, you're making a very conscious decision to capture that image. And I'd wonder if the connection to memory is stronger because you're making an active, an active motion to go along with it, rather than something so passive as just get your phone out and take a photo and put it back in your pocket.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you always have your camera on you, that it's that, that easy, that portable, because it might happen upon a moment. I don't want to say once in a lifetime, but maybe it's a fleeting moment that would be deserving of this capture, this frozen, kind of frozen existence. So I love that. Yeah, you always have a camera with you. I try to always have like a sketchbook with me. Not that I'm always drawing from like anything, but sometimes when you observe something, see something, inspired by something, that I have a way to record it. Your camera's your way of recording.
Yeah.
There's times that I do forget it. I'll forget to put it in my purse, and I kick myself in the butt so many times because I'll see like a really good picture. I'm like, man, I wish I had my camera with me. But yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and I often find myself like jotting down weird shapes and little compositions on the back of receipts or whatever piece of paper happens to be in my pocket, or anything I can make a mark on that happens to be in my pocket. And then I, usually toss it back in there, and I'm like, oh yeah, that thing. So it's funny how we all choose to collect the things that we hold important. But everybody, if there are no other questions, I think we can, say thank you so much to Emily and Seijo for taking the time and speaking with us, and all of you for joining. And this has been great. This turnout's been wonderful. And, feel free to, I feel like we've been through the exhibition a couple times now on our site, but if you'd like to go back and spend more time with them, you may. But you can certainly come in and see us in person as well. And we're doing everything we can to make it a nice, safe space for everybody. So
thank you. It's great.
Okay.
Very
Thanks a lot.
interesting.
Very nice.
Thank you all. It's good to see you all.
Thank you,
Take
everyone.
care, Emily.
Mhm.
See you soon.